Teachers are the new millionaires. They may act poor, but money they got more. Just ask Dave Ramsey, think teachers don't get paid well. When it comes to making money, they ring the bell. And if you say they don't work hard, they will tell you go straight to detention. Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody, let's lose control. Brand John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
John Combest, good morning to you, John Combest.
Good morning to you, Brad. It's great to start on a national holiday by besmirching teachers.
Well, they're not working today, so.
No, Brad, how do you know they're not sitting right now at their home office getting their lesson plans together and little Timmy's IAP together for tomorrow?
Because they're still in bed, hungover from the weekend. That's what the deal is. Come on. Because in order to deal with little Timmy, they've got to have some liquid refreshment, or now some plant-based refreshment, if you get what I'm saying, John.
I catch your smoke drift, bro.
That is John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T, every single day of his life. For the past 24 years, he put together this incredible list of all the important stuff you should know going on in the state of Missouri. Now, it's information overload for guys like me. I never get past the first two things because I'm like, my mind goes out and ADD and squirrels, shiny objects, stuff like that. But for those of you who want to know what's going on, John gives you the top three. We bring in this dude right here, pull him out of the grave in Norway.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he starts off with...
In third place.
Well, the north side of St. Louis has boys that are bad to the bone. And if you know Cori and you make up a story, you can get a pandemic loan. Now, there's no you in this Cortney, and this Merritts ain't on 44. He became Cori's hubby when she was still chubby. Then she lost to Wesley in 24. Come on, and it's bad. Cortney M. Cori's campaign takes care of him. We're just waiting for the court to adjourn. Don't ask that man for his tax returns. Now Thursday, about a week ago, Cortney was in D.C. Then Cori called up her squad and said, it's kind of odd the feds let Cortney walk away scot-free. Come on, and it's bad. Cortney M. Cori's campaign take care of him. No more waiting for the court to adjourn. Don't ask that man for his tax returns.
No stairway. Denied.
Don't ask that man for his tax returns.
No stairway. Denied.
Good news, Brad, if you are a fan of Cori Bush, and bad news if you're a hater like Brad Hildebrand, because triumphantly, last week in federal court, federal prosecutors decided to drop the case against Cori Bush's husband, Cortney Merritts. Now, it's been a few weeks since we talked about this. We talked about the fact that federal prosecutors were going after Mr. Cori Bush for alleged pandemic loan scams. And it's important to note, I don't think we pointed this out the last time that we talked about this, but the case was originally brought by Ed Martin, St. Louis's own Ed Martin. Actually, Ed's from New York, but he lived in St. Louis for a while. So, Brad, it's great news for Cori Bush. You know, originally, the jury came back hung. Now, Brad, I know you probably have something to say about a story involving a black man and, well, you know. Merritts was charged in March 2025 with 2 felony counts of mail fraud for allegedly obtaining about $30,000, $29,000 to be specific, from 2 SBA programs meant for COVID relief. Federal courts confirm that during a hearing Thursday, prosecutors told U.S. District Judge Gia M. Cobb they were dismissing the case. And I should give credit here. This piece that I'm reading from is coming from Joe Holloman, who's kind of the political columnist guy from the Post-Dispatch. And it was reported a day earlier by Greg Palermo in Spectrum News. So, Brad, it looks as though Mr. Cori Bush gets off scot-free. And you may wonder, Brad, gee, why would the Fed spend so much time and so many resources going after Mr. Merritts here? And then, after one unsatisfactory judgment, just dropping the case. Pardon me. I reached out to an attorney friend who shall remain nameless, or else, God love you, Brad, you would say,
Hey, so-and-so's your friend. Let's text him. Ask him why this is happening.
So I won't say his name. But this gentleman tells me, quote, I ask, hey, is this something to the effect of the feds just think that they wouldn't be able to get a satisfactory judgment the second time around? And this gentleman says, the public explanation is likely the most realistic one. Prosecutors are loath to try cases that result in a hung jury. It's difficult to get all the evidence compiled again and all the witnesses, plus you've already showed your hand to the defense attorney. My guess is there are some crucial pieces of evidence that are in some way compromised, and it's difficult for them to think they could get a better result the second time. So, despite all the hubbub over the last year and people besmirching Mr. Cortney Merritts, it appears as though he's going to walk away scot-free.
Well, did you expect any less, John?
Yeah, I did. I think if it looked as though, so I actually went through and I read the indictment last night, and I don't know, other than having a jury that might be sympathetic to the man, I don't know how you explain some of if you're a defense attorney, I guess you don't have to defend Mr. Merritt's tax returns and some other things he showed where it appeared as though he clearly didn't have employees that he said he had. He clearly wasn't getting income, any sort of income from these alleged businesses that he has. And I guess, I don't know, Brad, I think it's just, if you can't convince a jury of it and you're the prosecutor and you're the defense, if you're the defense, it's not your job to convince the jury. You just have to make sure that the feds don't convince the jury. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So I guess we're just at a spot where I read the indictment and it's some of the facts here are laughable if they're true, of the things that Mr. Merritts was allegedly pretending to have all these employees that didn't exist. And then he made up allegedly other tax returns. And you will recall the last time we discussed this about 3 weeks ago, a point of contention was that prosecutors wanted Mr. Merritts to submit tax returns, I believe, from the last few years. And Mr. Merritt's attorneys were like, absolutely not. So, I mean, you can probably draw your own conclusions there or wildly speculate, whatever. But what this does, though, in practical terms, is it gives Cori something to talk about on the campaign stump this spring and this summer, because she can say something to the effect of, even them Republican prosecutors in D.C. dropped the case against my man. Okay. And so, it takes that off the table. Now, again, in practical terms, if you're the type to believe that maybe Cori Bush would give a little walking around money or campaign money to her husband just because, you're probably not going to be convinced that Cori and Cortney are completely, quote unquote, innocent here. So this isn't going to change anybody's mind, but it gives Cori a good talking point on the campaign stump.
Okay, question. If the court requests documents, in this case, tax returns, how can you say no? I mean, that would be like, if you were accused of murder or something like that, and the court said, we want your fingerprints. You said, no, you can't have my fingerprints. I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm not sure exactly how that particular point of contention worked out here. I mean, obviously we see that Mr. Merritts and team won in court. I mean, they won by not getting a negative ruling from the jury. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, Brad. I mean, there's a chance that maybe, I don't know, Cortney could say that he accidentally injected some of Cori's Ozempic into his gut. It caused him to forget where he placed those documents. Who knows? You could come up with any sort of defense.
And is it true that they had a winery together? They bought a winery someplace in California. Is that true as well, too? A winery?
No, I think you're just thinking of the Hoffmans again. I think it's your Hoffman's derangement syndrome.
I was thinking more of Ilhan Omar with the imaginary winery, if you've been following that case.
Oh, I don't. What happened there? Did she pretend to buy a winery?
Oh, you don't know this whole story? Maybe.
No, I don't.
Maybe we'll talk about that in C Block. It's pretty interesting. Okay, ready for number 2?
Yeah, let's do it, Brad.
Up a notch to number 2.
Brad, I'm going to ask you a kind of a sourcing question, a help wanted question here. Do you know anyone in the Westplex who might be old, curmudgeonly, tell the same stories over and over again, who has opinions on the St. Louis airport? Do you know anybody like that?
Rick and Tracy Ellis.
Oh, there you go, Brad. There you go. Okay, well, keep them in mind because there might be a spot on the commission for them. What commission? I'll tell you. Over the weekend, I had a headline from Kurt Erickson of the Post-Dispatch. St. Charles County, quote, meddling, end quote, in quest for more oversight of St. Louis Airport, city says. Now, Kurt Erickson, you can tell his point of view. If Republicans in Jeff City want something, obviously Kurt Erickson is going to be skeptical of it and criticize it. But I'll give you how Kurt started his story. St. Charles County officials want more say in the operations and finances of the St. Louis Lambert International Airport, arguing it is a regional asset that needs broader oversight. St. Louis officials pushed back on Thursday, accusing the county of, quote, meddling, end quote, in the business of the city, which owns the soon-to-be upgraded facility in North St. Louis County. So to cut to the chase here, Richard West of New Melly says, I've traveled to about 25 airports this year, and St. Louis is the worst. The infrastructure is old. Our airport needs some help. So the idea would siphon, according to Kurt Erickson, siphon some control of the airport away from the city. So Richard West says, we need to give St. Charles County more influence on how money is spent, who's actually running the thing. And as you can imagine, the St. Louis City folks aren't too happy about that. And in fact, Jacque Bardgett, who represents the city of St. Louis, said the proposals inject politics into the $2.8 billion reconstruction project. You know that's coming, and would add a little bit of instability to it. She says, quote, our biggest concerns are with the uncertainties that might happen with the upcoming expansion. So in other words, St. Charles County says we want more say over how this is spent. And I think the unstated thing here is St. Louis City, you don't know what you're doing. This is another example of how we need to have another adult in the room to just kind of make sure the city does stuff right. Now, before we discuss, Brad, I will point out something that I think could potentially undermine the argument of the folks from St. Charles County. And of course, Kurt Erickson is happy to point this out. Under questioning, West acknowledged that he had not discussed his plan with the mayor, city aldermen, or St. Louis County officials. When he was asked if he's had discussions, West said, I have had none, and I am hoping to have some. So it would be pretty important, I think, for Mr. West to talk to someone from the city or county before he floats this proposal. I mean, that you can't undo that now because he's already proposed this and already had it face stiff opposition from the city. So, Brad, there could be someday an opportunity for someone tied to the Westplex to give an opinion on what's going on in the airport and whether they should be spending all that money anyway. What do you think?
John, here's the problem with the St. Charles County people. Instead of complaining about the city, they should just build their own airport. All that property out there in Forestel, which, you could take, right next to the new data center out there in Forestel, you could put a nice airport out there and start from scratch. Wouldn't have to worry about all the design constraints you have with the current airport being sandwiched in between Lindbergh and 70 and McDonald and on the east side 170. You've got a blank canvas in St. Charles County. Scott from the EDC could, spearhead this just like like he spearheaded the move to bring the Kansas City Chiefs and the Royals here to St. Charles County to the Westplex.
Yeah, that was a good idea of yours, Brad. I'm glad he appointed you to that committee.
There was no committee because he never, ever did anything, but that's a whole nother story. See, this is my problem. Build an airport in St. Charles County. I mean, and screw those people in the city. Hey, you can have your own airport. See, just like, look what the people in St. Clair County did with the Mid-America Airport. My God, that's a bustling hub of activity over there. I mean, sometimes the traffic on 64 to get off that exit to go to Mid-America Airport is so incredibly tough. And there are people, matter of fact, there are scalpers. I don't know if you know this or not. There are guys that bring their wives over to the Mid-America Airport and they say, okay, stand in that parking space. And they go out in the street and they say, hey, for $30, my wife will get out of the parking space, which is right close to the airport. You can just park right in there. Oh, $30, that's a bargain. So they could do the same thing in St. Charles County, John.
That makes, now to be fair, I've met a lot of women from the east side, and some of them, if you see some of these guys' wives, they do beep when they back up. And speaking of scalpers, let's go to story number one.
The number one.
This story broke over the weekend and was published in the St. Louis Business Journal, colloquially known as St. Louis's second favorite BJ. Anyway, it was picked up by KSDK News over the weekend, and I linked to the KSDK story over the weekend because you could get a free snippet from the BJ there. And thankfully, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch did their own coverage, which you can find today on johncombest.com. And as always, you can find a paywall-free version as well. Here's the headline from Colleen Schrappen. City SC, that soccer club, City SC restricts BLM and transgender flags from display at soccer games. Frustrating fan groups. There's some fan groups that are frustrated, but I'll give it to you straight from Colleen here. Let me get ready here, Brett. City SC is tightening restrictions on the type of banners and flags. Make sure you put the L in that word. Flags. Banners and flags in supporter groups can display during soccer games, group members say. There's apparently 7 primary supporter groups. There's diehards who fuel the crowd's enthusiasm with singing and drumming and signage in the north ends of the field. And they can display banners and signs every year. And they had their annual meeting on Wednesday, and they are not happy at all because the city gave them a list of banner designs that had been approved. Uh-oh, here's where the drama comes in. That's when these groups realized that the rules had changed. A Black Lives Matter flag and a transgender pride banner, both of which had been used in previous seasons, were nixed. Now, to cut to the chase here, if you're one of these supporter groups, you can still fly your pride flag. Pride flag, super gay stuff, good. Transgender flag, gender bender, transgender stuff, no good. City SC did not immediately respond for a request for comment. So obviously media is going to end up pressing them for more detail. They got to decide if they want to put somebody on camera to answer tough questions, etc. That's beyond the scope of this. But this reminds us of a story from last fall in which a gentleman who was wearing a Make America Great Again hat was thrown out of the stadium. And in fact, our friend Gregg Keller pointed out, pardon me, he tweeted yesterday. I tweeted this video, that was the MAGA video, on August 2nd, 2025. It was viewed more than 5 million times and garnered press on every continent, save Antarctica. Today, St. Louis City stopped singling out Republicans for discrimination at their park. So Gregg here is underscoring the fact, by the way, that Gregg did fantastic work here. Gregg has connections at the highest level of government. I think it's fair to point out. So when he tweeted this video last week of this gentleman's video from St. Louis SC, I remember Gregg followed it up with a tweet that said something to the effect of, I can confirm that folks at the highest level of the DOJ and other places at the White House and in the White House administration had seen the video. So quickly, this was spread by other influencers, thanks to Gregg, and a lot of attention and probably a lot of heat got put on St. Louis City SC. So I guess if you go to a City game, you can see a gay flag, but you're not going to be subjected to BLM propaganda or gender bender stuff. You're going to have to put up with the pride flag and the soccer is for everyone flag, but you don't have to deal with the tranny or the BLM stuff. So big win, I think, for Trump supporting people here in St. Louis.
You know, this is much ado about nothing. I'm glad you brought up the deal about the guy getting kicked out from the MAGA hat, which to me was like, come on now. I mean, that is so ridiculous. I mean, and how many views did that video get? 5 million views?
Yeah, 5 million. So the gentleman had posted it himself, I believe, on his social network. And then Gregg was the one that really amplified it nationwide and worldwide.
You know, what if somebody shows up and, you know, let's say I love Hillary Clinton. They had a hat that say that. Would they get thrown out, do you think?
I don't know. I think we would hear in advance that Hillary was here.
Or how about Barack?
I don't think anybody but Hillary. I mean, Bill's certainly not going to love Bill's not going to wear an I love Hillary hat.
Or how about Bill showed up with his I went to Epstein's Island hat on? What do you think that would garner any attention?
I think he could credibly claim that he flew out of the Westplex airport at the time.
Okay, John.
It was a direct flight down to Epstein Island.
By the way, I don't know if I should say this or not, but because John will accuse me of being a self-promoter. Maybe we'll talk about it in C Block, but I got pulled over yesterday in Florissant and I pulled off the perfect traffic stop, John.
Wow. And if someone in the interim in the break wants to look up where they can learn about it, is there a domain where you can find a really affordable guide?
PerfectTrafficStop.com. PerfectTrafficStop.com. And let me just, maybe I won't tell the whole story. I have to do a little
part of it. Tell the part, leave out the part where you bought the ditch weed.
The interesting part of this is that there are like 3 different stories that we talk about in this show that came together in one traffic stop yesterday, which was sort of interesting. Which was, it's a crazy story, John. I mean, even you won't believe what happened. I can't
wait to hear it, Brad. And if we have time in C Block, we have a redemption story from a popular topic on this show of a woman in a peekaboo shirt who once gave you a map. We have a redemption story with a happy ending.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I was thinking about that last night. We talked about the fact that, matter of fact, it was one of the best of shows that played over the weekend. That she was the report you had was she was in court that day at 10 o'clock, and we never followed up with it. So
and we got an update, Brad. You're going to like it, I think.
Okay,